So this is the Undup River.
Yes, it's Undup River. The Undup River is a tributary of the big river called Batang Lupa, the main river that drains into the South China Sea. Undup is located very near to the border, Indonesian border. You have to cross the mountain to go to the other side of the border. So there's a borderline.
So in the story, Sendi and Guang, she is a master weaver, Sendi.
Yes.
Do you know anything about Iban weaving?
A little bit, I can explain to you. This master weaver, not usually a very old lady,
Usually an old
very
lady.
experienced, and she has got a lot of experience in weaving. And in order to do the weaving, she has got to have a dream.
Okay.
Must have a dream first, and she will consult the spirit. Spirit will tell her what is designed to have, and if she goes against the design, then something will befall. Bad thing will happen in the longhouse.
Oh wow! So the dream tells her what to weave.
She's in touch with the spiritual world.
Okay.
Sendi is my name. I am the youngest daughter of the chief. The chief of the big longhouse on the banks of the Undup River. My father was a famous warrior when he was young. My mother died when I was very young. All my brothers and sisters grew up and married and moved on to different longhouses or worked on their own farms. I stayed with my father since I was the youngest. I helped him on the farm and looked after the household. My aunt taught me to weave beautiful fabrics. It was a must for Iban girls to learn to weave, to make patterns that were passed down for generations. I was shy and kept to myself when young men from our longhouse tried to get my attention. Some openly told me that they were in love with me, but most of them thought that I was very proud. I was not. I was just very, very shy. One night, I had a strange dream. My grandmother, who had passed away many years ago, appeared to me. She told me that when I grow up, I will marry a man named Guang. I have to be polite and friendly to everybody in the longhouse and make sure to not fall in love until Guang showed up. I was excited when the Gawai festival came. It was the time where we would have hundreds of visitors from the neighboring longhouses. The festival lasted for a few days, sometimes more than 7 to 10 nights. The sounds of the drums, the gongs, and the romantic strings of the sape. The singing would go on all night till sunrise. There were many handsome young men who visited. My heart would beat faster when they were introduced to me, but none of them were named Guang. Some of the old ladies would look at me with hawk eyes. Some were jealous. They would shake their heads and say, "Sendi will never get married. How will she ever find a man named Guang?" I secretly wished that Guang would visit our longhouse, but 2 Gawai festivals had come and gone, and nobody named Guang came. I had to be patient and wait. I wish my grandmother told me when Guang was coming. One morning, I asked my father for a longboat with a few strong men as rowers. My father asked me where I was going. He was worried for me. You have never been on a long journey. The waters are filled with danger. Hungry crocodiles in the river. There are hidden rocks and raids downriver. There can be storms that can be so strong that the boat can overturn. What if pirates attacked the boat and take you away as a slave? It is very dangerous. I told him that I was not frightened. I had his fighting blood in me. I was his strong daughter, and I wanted to be obedient to my grandmother. She wants me to marry Guang. I remember the dream very clearly. It was a promise. If Guang isn't here, I will go and find him myself. Finally, my father agreed. Uncle Sidi is the best lookout man in the whole of Undup. My aunt was also planning to come with me, and she knew crocodile magic. She could make the reptiles sleep. I piled brass gongs and many tall jars into the boat, with enough clothes for a few moons. I waved at the people in the longhouse as we paddled away. My father and friends stood at the jetty, waving back to me.
So Laura, is your dad as strict as Sendi's dad?
You know what? Definitely not. He'd probably hate me for saying this, but he's really easy to convince. My mum, on the other hand, would probably have more doubts.
Yeah, reservation.
Yeah.
But it's typical of our local culture here.
Yeah.
It's always the mother that's very fussy about her daughter, going out on the strange journey like this, adventure along the Sarawak River.
Yeah, I think very protective, but my parents know that I'm in good hands with you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They know.
So when I was talking to my Ini about this story, she said that although seemingly quite a simple love story, it's actually some interpret it to be symbolic of the way that Iban actually came to Sarawak. Do you know about this? Is that true to
Iban
you?
migration. The home of the Iban, original home of the Iban, is in the Kapuas Valley in Indonesian side of the Borneo, formerly known as Dutch Borneo.
Right.
Today is Kalimantan.
Kalimantan.
So they cross over the mountain range to settle down in Sarawak. Now, why do they do that? One reason being not enough land for them to plant their rice. And the reason is that maybe some epidemic disease broke out, so they have to leave their homeland and cross over to the side of the border. And to the one of the many places near the border is Undup, which is here.
Right.
Right.
I could see the group of old ladies talking among themselves. I guessed what they were saying. Will Sendi find this Guang? Was the dream even real? Was it a promise? Or did she imagine it? Soon the longboat glided away down the river. The Undup longhouse was out of sight. We traveled a long way from home before we found a longhouse to rest. The people were kind, and the paddlers rested on the veranda. my aunt and I were given a room in the longhouse. My aunt asked the old ladies in the longhouse if there was a young man named Guang. There was no one named Guang. Our journey continued. We stopped to ask at a few more longhouses, but there was no Guang. A few days later, we paddled on until we reached the big Batang Lupa. This big river flowed slower. It was broad and dirty. Sometimes the water seemed to flow backwards. It made it hard for the paddlers to row. Uncle Sendi told me that it was the tide from the sea. Uncle had been a traveler when he was young and knew about faraway lands. The men had to paddle hard against currents. The land on both sides was flat. Soon, we saw rice paddies and fruit trees at the river banks. The wind blew strongly. The air was filled with the sound of seabirds that flew over the waters. It seemed that they were welcoming us. Suddenly, Uncle Sendi called out, "That is a big, strong longhouse." The paddlers slowed down and guided the longboat towards the jetty. There were young men in small boats fishing near the longhouse. Young children were playing and splashing in the water. One man was bathing his fighting cock. Some were bathing their livestock. Others were on the jetty watching our longboat. Of course, our boat was big and paddled by strong men, with my aunt and me sitting in the center. Heads turned to gaze at us. Uncle Sendi answered loudly, "We come from Undup, a long way upriver. We are looking for a young man called Guang." My heart missed a beat when the most handsome fisherman turned around and asked, "Who calls my name?" I blushed when my aunt and some of the other women in our longboat shouted with joy, "We have found him! We have found him!" He looked surprised and a bit shy. "Whom have you found?" My aunt looked at him and said, "Sendi is the daughter of our longhouse chief. She had a dream that her grandmother told her, in the dream, that she would marry a man called Guang. So she refused all the bachelors in our longhouse because none of them were called Guang. He just stood there looking at me, mesmerized. The celebration lasted the whole day and a night. Suddenly, his younger brother jumped up and down, full of excitement. "This is what our grandmother has been telling you, older brother. Grandmother always said that you will marry a girl from a faraway longhouse. She always said that your bride will be more beautiful than all the other girls in our longhouse. She said that your wife will be clever, hardworking, and kind-hearted, maybe this is the girl. He looked at me, and I was suddenly very shy. I knew I was blushing.
So you said that the Ibans had to move to find flat land for farming. What were the Ibans farming back then?
When they first migrated to the interior, the land was mountainous, hilly. So as the population increased, the planting in hill paddy is not sustainable because they clear the forest, and because of the high rainfall, a lot of this topsoil was leached down. And after 3 seasons, they cannot plant rice there anymore.
Okay.
So they have to move somewhere else to find better piece of land. In this case, the Undup Iban, the new generation, they move downriver, and where they find a lot of flat areas to plant rice.
So besides paddy, were there any animals? Did they care for livestock?
Yes, pigs is very important.
Pigs.
Very important because pigs multiply very fast.
The Ibans can't live without pigs.
Yeah, they hunt the pigs and they keep the pig as well. Easy to domesticate the pigs.
They domesticate the pigs? They keep them as pets?
Yes, no, they're in the longhouse, underneath the longhouse.
Wow.
They always have pigs in. So they provide them with the protein. Without pigs, most of the Iban, maybe they cannot survive. So pigs very important.
How about, do they have chickens as well?
Fighting cock.
Fighting cocks.
Fighting cocks.
Of course.
Yes.
What a silly
it's part
question.
of the culture.
Yeah.
We were invited into the veranda of the longhouse and served food and drinks. Later, I was invited into the room that belonged to Guang's mother. Many more women crowded the room excitedly. They all talked together. "This is the girl your son has been waiting for, Indai Guang. He has finally found his bride." Guang's mother spread a fine mat for my aunt and me. She served us drinks, then questioned me about my skills. She wanted to know if I was really good enough to be a good wife to her son. She asked me if I could make baskets and mats. I was too shy to answer. My aunt spoke up for me, telling her that I could make fine mats with delicate patterns and baskets. Can she plant rice and grow vegetables? Look after chickens and pigs? Of course, she used to take care of her father's paddy field, and she can take care of livestock. She can cook. She can brew rice wine. Can you weave patterns like creepers and stars? I just reached into the basket and took out a piece of cloth and spread it in front of her. I made this myself. The cloth was deep red and big as a sleeping mat. I had created a black and white pattern showing birds' footprints, curly fern sprouts, a ladder to the sky, with people's faces and the crocodile king in the center. Guang's mother was very impressed. "This is the best weaving I have ever seen. No ordinary girl could make these patterns, Sendi." The very next week, there was a very big wedding in the longhouse of Subuyao. My aunt dressed me up in the finely woven clothes. She tied a silver belt around my waist, silver bangles on my hands and feet, a crown of silver leaves and flowers on my head. Then she led me out of the room into the wide veranda where the people were waiting. I was asked to sit on a small gong next to Guang, who was sitting on a big gong. A wise old man waved a chicken over our heads and prayed for us. We had to cut betel nut and shared it with the old people of the longhouse. With so many drinks, food, rice wine, songs, and dance, the celebration lasted the whole day and a night. I looked out at the river from the longhouse. I felt the wind and heard the sound of the seabirds singing. I felt a gust of gentle wind, and I knew that my grandmother was watching me. This was her blessing.
So Laura, like Sendi, do you wait for your Guang?
Would I wait for my Guang?
Yes.
Well, if he was really handsome and good at fishing like Guang, I think I would, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a song for him?
I do actually. I love singing and making songs.
Oh, I'm curious to hear your song.
You'd like to hear it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I could hum it for you. Is that okay?
Right.
All right.